D&D Vampires are not your sister's crystalline brooding anti-heroes. They are Slavic flesh-eating monsters in the classic style that sustain their unlife through your hot blood. So sharpen your stakes, pull out the garlic, and fill up your holy waters. I'm Jonathan Pruitt, this is Jim Davis, and we're talking vampires on WebDM. All right, Jim, let's talk about vampires.
Vampires?
D&D has vampires. You okay? Jim?
Yes.
Let's talk about vampires.
All right, let's talk about vampires.
What are the influences that go into making the D&D vampire?
They're not twinkly, sparkly. They're not the brooding anti-heroes of the 90s. They got nothing involved with Anne Rice or the White Wolf games. These are terrible Eastern European mythology-inspired blood-drinking monsters. And in a lot of ways, the influences on the D&D vampire are sort of the old Hammer horror films from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Dracula, Bela Lugosi, and that they've kept that influence.
Right.
And in terms of sort of the fantasy mythology that surrounds all of D&D and other role-playing games, in my opinion, they're really kind of unique in that regard because they haven't shifted with changing attitudes or popular perceptions about vampires. They are still monsters.
Right.
They are not sexy.
Yeah.
They're not hot. They are,
Suck it.
they are just, get out of their way.
Yeah.
Do not get anywhere near them because they want to kill you, drink your blood. That's how they've sustained their unlife for this long.
With shifting editions, they've changed a lot of monsters' abilities. How has the vampire fared in that regard? I mean, as far as like the broad range of what they can do.
Right. So, I mean, along with all other undead, they're not really draining levels anymore like they used to. And that's just sort of how the editions have shifted. But one of the things that I find really interesting about the 5th edition vampire is that they've kept those weird characteristics that in 1st or 2nd edition, or maybe sometimes even 3rd edition, stuck around as sort of vestigial elements of the earlier editions of the game. So it's like running water harms them, and you can stake them, but that doesn't kill them.
Right.
It just sort of renders them inert for a while. Sunlight is still a big problem for vampires. It's not the instant death that it would be, you know, being caught out in the open as a vampire during broad daylight. They still have an opportunity to get away.
Yeah.
And if they're one of the spellcasting variants, why wouldn't they just throw up a darkness spell around them?
Cast it on them.
GTFO. So in terms of that, there's still this weird collection of abilities that give them a lot of survivability. They turn into mist whenever they're at 0 hit points, so they can get away that way. They can polymorph into weird animals and things. They can charm. So they just have these odd abilities that make them incredibly survivable as a monster, and chances are, unless the players know exactly what's needed to kill them, and if I were running a game, it'd be like, that's a religion check, guys. You can't just pop over that monster manual and figure that out.
Right.
Or unless you're a professional vampire hunter for some reason. It's going to take a while for the players to realize, how do we deal with a monster like this? How do we incapacitate it and eliminate it as a threat?
Yeah, so it'd probably be a good reoccurring villain, like a Bond villain kind of.
Exactly.
You know, there's also vampire spawn. You know, when you're controlling your vampire,
Right.
he's got his vampire spawn henchmen. How do you use those?
So those are just your minions, your sort of agents of the vampire. They're sort of the intermediaries. So I'm imagining a vampire who wants to, you know, get something done, or maybe he rules from afar in some sort of brooding castle or something like that, or deep from an underground crypt where he's hidden himself away, or maybe it's somewhere in a city where it's sort of a group of vampires who've gotten together and they're sort of creating some sort of weird cabal or cult. They're trying to insinuate themselves in the city, and the vampire spawn are sort of their intermediaries, their cat's paws, their eyes and ears, that kind of thing. And then from there, they have those mortals who are attracted to whatever the vampire has to offer, whether it's money or power or influence or something. So the vampire spawn are a good way to get the players accustomed to the mechanics of fighting vampires, a good way to get them accustomed to just the undead menace of it, and really so that maybe the first time they fight the vampire, they've been able to practice on lower powered vampire spawn so that they're not caught completely off guard. That said, sometimes you just want to throw a vampire in there and not give them a preview and then have them work it out for what it is.
You got a PC, he wants to be a vampire. He loves it. What do you do?
I mean, I don't know. It depends on what they want to do with that vampire PC. Are they willing to put up with all the disadvantages? I mean, it's not just like orcs or drow where they can't really, they have like sort of, it kind of sucks to be out in the sunlight for them, but they can get over it. You got like what, 5-6 rounds depending on how many hit points you have to be out in the sunlight as a vampire. That's a really high hurdle to overcome for a potential player character. The Monster Manual recommends that perhaps the DM takes control of that character until they are healed or cured in some way. It offers wish or killing them and resurrecting them as being one of the only 2 ways to get rid of vampirism. So I'm imagining a situation where, yeah, maybe you want to become a vampire or play one as your PC, or if you accidentally become a vampire, the DM now has a villain that they can throw at you. Is the party's mission now to try to cure that player? Coming back to whether or not you allow a player to become a vampire and to continue to play one, that's up to the individual DMs. If the power level of the game is such that it's not going to be completely unbalancing, probably wouldn't let it happen at first level. But if it's like a mid-level campaign and someone's like, hey, I really kind of want to play a vampire because I dig the imagery or the mythology of it, I'm sure that there's a way to do it. Maybe you don't let them have full access to all the powers.
Yeah, maybe you don't have the mist and regeneration and all that.
Yeah.
You know, because you're young, you got to learn.
You got to learn. You have to develop those powers, and so like a lot of things, it's about a trade-off. What do you want to do? You know, do you want to accept some of the vampire powers in lieu of a feat or an ability score increase? Do you want it to be sort of like what class best fits the vampire, and can you create a custom subclass that relates to that? Or maybe just let them have it all at once and see what happens. You know.
Yeah, that'd be pretty ridiculous. One thing that the vampire entry in the Monster Manual does is give you some variants.
Yes. So I love the variant vampires. I like the fact that they're just included to begin with. So it lets you mix things up a bit. But it also serves as a template for how DMs can alter other monsters. So if you want to add in spellcasting to, say, your devil troop or whatever, or if you want to have a more martially adept monster, it just shows you, like, this is how you would do that. You don't need a whole new monster. It's just you need to make these tiny little tweaks to it, give it a different weapon, change the attack bonus, let it cast some spells. You don't have to do this whole complex calculation to create a new monster or a variant. You just add on these little bits to an existing monster. And I think the vampire variants, spellcaster and warrior, offer potential DMs a way to make their own custom monsters.
There is a setting in D&D, Ravenloft.
Ravenloft, yep. Started out as this really great adventure, Castle Ravenloft, where you're sort of battling the vampire Strahd von Zarovich. And
It's a great vampire name.
It's a great vampire name, and it's such an amazing dungeon, and has one of the most evocative maps. I've used the map for Castle Ravenloft so many times, I'm surprised I've never been called on it. But it's just a great adventure that evokes the classic feel of like Bram Stoker's Dracula. That if you're in the mood to fight a Dracula monster, then you will really get a lot out of getting your hands on the old module. In terms of a setting, Ravenloft is bleak, it's dark, the heroes lose, the villains always win. It is difficult to play in because of that darkness and grimness of it. Maybe it's something that your players dip into once. They're walking through the forest, the mists of Ravenloft surround them, and they wake up in von Zarovich's domain within Ravenloft, and now it's like, well, what are all these villagers afraid of? Why? Well, because there's a vampire that rules over them, and as wolves and bats and vampire spawn prowl the night, and that's just what they have to deal with. They can't get out, they can't leave. Now you're trapped here. What are you going to do? It also lets you play around with what if the monsters won? What would that look like in D&D? And that's really the Ravenloft setting. For players and groups who like a dark setting, or they like that gothic fantasy, that Ravenloft is going to be the game for them. That and the Van Richten's Monster Slayer guides are great if you can get your hands on them.
Thanks again for watching WebDM. Be sure to click the subscribe button, and also if you want to head over to Facebook, you can check out Jim's inspiration list for his campaign coming up. We're going to have new ones every Wednesday. Tell your friends. Come back next week.